Welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. Once again, it's time to bring in my colleague and social media reporter, Mariama. Take it away again, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. As mentioned earlier, Prime Minister Lionel Zinsou of Benin has conceded defeat to businessman Patrice Talon in a second-round runoff presidential vote. The small West African nation joins many other African countries in respecting term limits of their constitutions and hopefully moving forward with the process of peaceful political transition. Well, this leads us to our question of the week, which asks, what would you like to see accomplished by Benin's new president? Well, before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for using all our social media platforms to speak directly to us. Another reminder that we are tweeting live today. Just use the hashtag VOA Benin President. And if you haven't yet, do follow us on Twitter at VOA Shaka. Speaking of it, let's go to a tweet from Emmanuel Kachele, who tweets, I'd like to see Patrice Talon lead the Beninese well and to ensure a smooth power shift. Well, let's now turn to our Facebook followers and go to a post from Chindefu Aubrey Kasunu from Zambia, who writes, democracy should be the rule of acceptable laws of the land, such as free press, freedom of association, access to basic public welfare, health, education, and other infrastructure provided by many current governments. It should not be the rule of the majority. Well, a range of opinions here, Shaka, and guess your take on this comment.
Very interesting, Hermine, your reaction to that.
Well, I totally agree with some of the tweets, especially was related to the candidate who is supposed to be trying to have a better life for the Beninese. You know, we are applauding today the successful transition to another government. But in the meantime, there's still some issues that we have to face. Some issues related to women, for example, issues related to entrepreneurship, and so forth. And those are really issues
what about
that
education?
Education, that's a big one too.
Healthcare
is important. Healthcare system, you know, is big. Those are big issues. We need social issues that we have to deal with because we haven't made any bigger progress when it comes to healthcare or education, for example. You know, which is still that even though education is free for primary and for girls, we still see that the gap between boys and girls is huge when it comes to education. When it comes to the healthcare system, there's a lot that needs to be done. And that's, we noticed that with when we have the Ebola crisis, we see how Africa is lacking a lot in healthcare infrastructure. And same for Benin, the healthcare infrastructure is lacking. And he has a lot ahead of him to accomplish.
Mariama, do we have any more feedback, please?
Absolutely, we do. Let's go to a comment from Bishop Bosco Wambi. He's writing from right here in the United States from Texas. He says democracy is the best way of living in politics. So thanks to the current president of Benin. And let's pray for Uganda also to join the democracy movement. Sure, you'll have some things to say about that one. Let's, while we're at it, let's take a look at another Facebook comment, this time from Yahya Ahmed Gumel from Jigawa in Nigeria, who writes, as election anxieties and desperation are over, the newly elected president should, as a matter of urgency, take the necessary steps to ensure effective and efficient services are delivered to the electorate who gave him the mandate. Social issues and problems such as poverty, unemployment, corruption, health, and education should take center stage. He should make justice, accountability, and transparency his philosophy. Well said, Shaka. And guess once again, your take. I'm sure we addressed some of these issues earlier, but it looks like that people are already looking beyond the election results and trying to figure out what should the president do.
Chris, what about that? Does Taron, in fact, have the vision thing, apart from making money and having deep pockets?
Well, I think, when you've run a business and you've run it well, you start up with a lot of things working for you in terms of being able to run a country. And I would say that if you look keenly, maybe even one reason why some of the transitions have been very difficult to sustain on the continent is that you've had people who have been civil servants, public servants all their lives.
Or never had a job.
Who never really applied for a job.
Yeah.
Who never knew how to reconcile competing interests. Who all of a sudden are thrust into a position of power and then asked to govern millions of other people. But if you have someone who has been in the private sector, who has been a businessman, who has negotiated difficult transactions, who has been involved in international issues and domestic issues, who knows the plight of ordinary workers because he's had to employ people, there's a good chance that he will do very well. And I think if he may just have to start with maybe creating a blind trust in which he can put all of his private investments so that he can make a distinction between his private investments and the public goods that belong to the state and the Beninese people. But I'm confident the way he's run his campaign, the way he's been able to get people around him. And, he went up against tough competition.
Correct.
The incumbent head of state was not in his favor.
Correct.
The incumbent speaker of the National Assembly was not with him. And yet he was able to rally ordinary people to get their votes. So I think he has something in him that can make Benin succeed and can make him succeed as a president.
But why was the incumbent president against a man who, in fact, supported his campaigns not once, but twice, in fact, was the chief financier of his presidential campaign in 2006 and 2011, the last time I checked?
Well, my sense is that in the next few years, we'll probably have more of that story come out between a family feud, I would say, between two individuals who know themselves well. But now it could very well have been that they disagreed on the whole issue of constitutional term limits, because that was what Patrice Talon said, that he didn't think that the president ought to amend the constitution, and that was the reason for their falling out. And now that we see that Patrice had political ambitions of his own, that may really have been the reason. But I'm hoping that with the Beninese having come out in an electoral process that was viewed as peaceful and very credible, indicating that they want to move their country forward, that those little issues will be resolved quickly and not allowed to interfere with the governance of the country.
We should point out, of course, in fairness to incumbent President Yayi Boni, he alleges, of course, that Patrice wanted to poison him.
Well, yeah, that was the allegation, and it's always difficult to get to the bottom of these things between family members or friends, because they really were like family members. But my hope is that the Beninese people have now spoken. To Boni Yayi's credit, he hasn't tried to interrupt the process.
No.
The Prime Minister Zinzu has been gracious in conceding defeat. President-elect Patrice Talon has been also very, very humble in accepting all of this recognition from the Beninese people. The country is really poised to move forward, and I think that's where everyone should really be focusing at this point.
I see. Well, thanks, Mariama, for bringing us this week's audience reaction.
Well, thank you. And that will do it for today's social media segment. Just a reminder that we appreciate all the feedback, whether it's in social media form or using other means to communicate to us. Please keep them coming. If you are a new fan, just drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com. Once again, our email address is africatv@voanews.com. Or post your comment on our Facebook page. Just enter the keywords Straight Talk Africa. Be sure to visit us online at voaafrica.com, or you can join our YouTube channel. Sign up to VOA TV to Africa, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at VOA Shaka. A reminder, the show is also streaming live every Wednesday. Just go to the VOA Straight Talk Africa TV program page on our website, or simply watch us live on your mobile device. Just download the VOA mobile app.